Welcome, everybody. I'm going to now try that again. Welcome, everybody. My name's John Howard. I'm from Mahomet Public Library, and I am going to be your facilitator for finding and keeping staff and trustees, which is a huge subject and more than we can possibly cover well in an hour. But I just want to say I'm glad that you are here, and we have we had 30 signups as of last night. I think I have about 10 in right now. So bear in mind that what you say or type might be recorded for posterity. Um, I'm going to get right into this, and let's go ahead and get started. It's exciting. Uh, okay, so just a quick, don't try to read this whole screen, but where are we going today? A little bit about me, how I want you to participate, why is this important? We're going to do some surveys as we go along, and then talk a little bit more about staff than about trustees. But we can talk about whichever you want to talk about as we go. And then we'll end up with some takeaways and future topics. So again, this is kind of giving you a roadmap. And I know there's a lot of text on there, so we'll skip on. Um, just a little bit about me. I am currently serving on the ILA conference committee for this year. I've been 17 years in libraries since 2007. My first directing job was at the Farmington Area Public Library, which is very much a rural and small library. Spent a couple of years there, and I'm now at Mahomet, which is a bedroom community to Champaign-Urbana and still qualifies as a small library um, according to ALA. We serve about 14,000 citizens is how many we have for our community. I have had just amazing, I'm going to say success, maybe luck at finding staff and trustees for my library. I think I have a few little things to share, but more this is about as a meetup, it's more about you guys sharing with each other. One thing that I will say is super important to me is I am an advocate for small and rural libraries. Kristen from ILA will attest to you that practically every meeting that I go to, I'm saying, how does this affect the small and rural libraries? Can the small and rural libraries afford to do this? Do we have enough sessions at the conference that are for the small and rural libraries? I'm sure it's already getting annoying, and I've only been involved for a little while, but I truly believe that so much of our state is served by libraries that are small and rural, and I think ILA is doing the best job it has since I've become a director of trying to reach out to and serve those people. So congratulations to ILA on that. I think it can still be better. I still think sometimes it still feels a little bit like the Illinois Large Suburban Library Association, but it's way better than it was. So I think we just need to keep advocating. So how we're going to participate today? Kristen, do you want to give a little bit of technical information to people who are here?
Thank you. Um, so welcome everybody, and please, this is your space. These meetups are a place for you to talk and share and ask questions. And this is a time that is led by John because he's had some great experience here, but there are a lot of experts in the room as well. So please, as you feel comfortable, raise your hand and I will unmute you. Use the Q&A, use the chat feature, really make it as much of your own as you would like. This is being recorded. We'll share it just within the small and rural libraries forum. This is a forum that if you haven't been involved in or kind of aren't really familiar with, that is really, again, making a space and a place for these questions and these conversations, because you do have a very specific lens with which you can do things and with its budget or staff or space or however your needs are unique. And so we want to make sure that there is a space for you as well. And I am fully in favor of all of John's comments at conference and any of the other events where we really try to make a space for small and rural libraries. So that being said, if anybody has any questions or technical difficulties, I will be on mute and off camera, but just holler and I will pop in. I'm here listening. I just want to make sure that the floor is for you guys.
Okay, so my vision for today is that a lot of things are going to happen in the chat. So I strongly recommend you open the chat box. If you use the chat box for like answers to things, or when I say, how are you doing this, please type in there. Again, if you'd like to speak, if you have something you'd like to say, it'd be easier to speak. We'd love to hear a voice other than mine throughout the course of the day. I might call on you if you put something interesting in the chat, but if you're not able to or interested in speaking, just say no microphone or something, and then we can just do it in the chat. But let's go ahead and get started with our content for today, which is a huge subject. And the first thing is, why is this subject important? And I think it's kind of self-evident, but the reality is, if we're being honest, nothing affects the quality of our jobs and the service that we provide to our public than the people. And in particular, the staff, and in particular, the trustees on the board of trustees. So, man, we can be really terrible directors. And if we have the right people around us, our library can still do great work. And at the same time, we can be the best directors in the world. And if we can't find quality people to work for us and with us, then we're going to find that we're very limited in how much we can do. So honestly, if there's anything as a director that we do that's um, more important than hiring well and recruiting well for our board, I defy you to tell me what it is. I don't know if there's anything that's a more important thing. I spend a ton of time on hiring when the time comes. And so far have had an almost perfect record on hiring. Not perfect, but almost perfect. I think we're all going to have those. So let's start with a survey. And that first question, what is your biggest challenge? Is it finding staff or is it finding trustees? So if you would please go ahead and share, and let's find out uh, where our focus maybe should be, especially today. Oh my. Okay. Anyone you left? And 12 out of 12 have answered. 7 people say finding staff is their biggest challenge. 5 people say finding trustees. So I'm going to say that we then need to make sure that we have time spent on both of those two things. Welcome, whoever just came in. Retaining, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later too. Okay. And that's actually going to be our next survey. So Kristen, if you could pull up our next survey, which is the question of which is harder for either of these two things. Is it harder to find the good people in the first place, or is it harder to keep them once you have them? Okay, it looks like we have 4 more people who haven't voted, so please jump in here. But it seems very obvious where we're going with this. It's half and half, it's both. Um, Let me ask you this, go ahead and answer in the chat. Do you specifically have more problems with retaining, when it comes to retaining, do you have more problems with retaining staff or trustees? You just one word answer in the thing, okay? And we went 50-50 on which is harder, so finding and retaining. So we'll make sure we take time off for both of those today. Awesome. Kristen, you can probably put the survey down if you want to at this point.
There, is it down now?
I don't know. I actually did with search. I saw that it didn't say stop sharing. I wasn't sure we'd actually ever shared it, but it is 50-50.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 50-50 on who's having trouble retaining things too. So, okay, great. Thank you, Jessica. I have not done much with webinar mode on Zoom, so I am a little bit of a newbie on that. All right, so let's make sure we make time for both of these things. All right, we're going to move on to the next thing. We are going to start with staff. And the first thing I would like to say, let's look at what are the advantages when you're hiring for a library. You know, um, what makes it more likely that we're going to get good staff than some other places. And I think, you know, it's pretty fair to say that for the most part, our jobs are pleasant indoors and usually not terribly physical. My shelvers might have a different answer to that last one. There's a lot of people who love libraries and a lot of people who can imagine themselves working on them. We're closed holidays. Jackie says that's a great point. Um, at my library, flexibility is huge. Now we have a staff total right now of I think 17 people, of whom 14 are part-time. And so it's pretty easy to get time off if you need it or to find someone to work your shift. But again, we're a little on the big sides when it comes to small and rural libraries. How many of you would say flexibility is something that you find is easy to offer your staff? Okay. And I ask you that partly because I know that when we do interviews, it's one of the things we really can use to sell the library. But if you've only got 3 or 4 staff members, sometimes it's not very easy to offer it. But it's something that's usually a difference between us and a more of a corporate workplace. Other advantages that people see, somebody said we can utilize their individual strengths when appropriate, which is great. Any other advantages there are for hiring when you're a library? What makes it easier for you to hire than say Casey's or um, the school district? Mm, that's a great point, Jessica, with being understanding of motherhood or being a caregiver. And of course, a lot of our people are going to be caregivers, not necessarily to people younger than them, but often to people older than them. I like that it's safe. I think that it is generally been safe. And Amy, I hadn't thought about that. Not really early, not really late. Nicely. It's about the culture, isn't it? I didn't say the culture here, but I think culture, the positive culture that we have working at the library. I'm not sure I've ever met anybody who hated working at a library. I think people find it just a really nice place to work. All right, let's turn to the disadvantages. What are the disadvantages? And I think we all know what the number one disadvantage is, and that is we can't afford to pay, especially at a small library. Um, what we wish we could, or maybe what some of our competitors can. Minimal to no benefits, you know, again, especially for part-time people. And what I find a lot of is people looking for full-time jobs, and we just don't have full-time jobs to offer. Even at, you know, again, I'm more of a mid-sized library. I only think I have 3 full-time people out of 17. What are the other disadvantages? Lack of benefits? The possibility of being a stepping stone. Lynn, are you interested in getting on the microphone and talking about that challenge? Being a stepping stone? Again, if you prefer not to, just say no mic or something.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. Um, we've had, I've been the director at the Limestone Township Library District for just over 14 years. And what I find is that we have a great staff. There is some turnover, but for some exceptional staff over the years, that typically leads to going to a larger library, going to full-time, going to where they can be paid more. Some of them don't even stay in the library field. They may work in another caregiving field of sorts, whether it's social work or teaching or otherwise. So we're always excited for them, but it's disappointing for us because they've been an asset.
Do you take that into account at all when you're hiring? I mean, sometimes you can look at somebody and you say, wow, this person's great, and they're going to be great, but it's probably a rental. Because we're only going to have them for a year.
That's been hard to see, with the
Right.
exception maybe of our programming and outreach position. Otherwise, since we have several that are very part-time, that's difficult to discern.
Right. Right. All right. Well, thanks, Lynn. From the comments, it looks like there are other people saying that that's also the case. How about, a couple people mentioned, dealing with patrons. I find that that's generally pleasant at this library, but I don't think it's always true. And we don't have this, we have lots of small kids. We don't have a lot of teens. Any other people see that dealing with patrons is something that makes it, is an unpleasant thing for your staff, that makes it hard for people that want to work there? Okay. See, Cindy says it's actually a benefit for them for the part-time. Okay. We should talk social work in the library another time. Actually, that would be an interesting subject for us to hit, but we're not going to do that today. I'm going to go ahead. It sounds like there are definitely advantages, disadvantages, and that's something that we're dealing with as we're trying to find the right people. So let's go on and talk about finding a really good staff member. And I'd like to start with something that I've learned just over the last couple of years. Actually, it was my business manager who helped me really incorporate this. And that is to look at the job descriptions that we're putting out there. And not make them just a list, but to really make them a vision for the position. And I'd like to just ask again in the chat, how many of you have read your job descriptions carefully and updated them recently? Sometimes it's very easy just to go ahead and say, well, I need another clerk. I already have a clerk job description. Um, and you don't necessarily look at it from a marketing perspective. Right? A lot of people who have actually been working on their job descriptions, which is great. Um, So I put up a little bit of an opening that we have at Muhammad Library right now, just to show you a little bit of what we've tried to add to, now this is the job ad, but it's in the job description as well. That first paragraph where you try to paint a vision of why it would be an amazing job, is something that we've tried to incorporate into all of our job ads, and really help them to see, kind of the joy of this. And also, I think trying to find in a way to put, as you look at both your descriptions and your job ads, painting as many positive and words in them, adjectives. So if you look in our second paragraph, you see creative, you see enthusiastic, you see responsible, you see successful. I think it's definitely helpful to try to look at, if I was an outsider, and I read this job description, what would the job feel like to me? Does this feel like it's something that I really want to do? Does it feel like something that would be exciting and fun? Does it sound stressful? Does it sound hard? Uh, and really look at those things. Um, so talking about job descriptions, it's more true for the job posting, of course. You want to sell the job, but you also want to sell the library and sell the staff. Now, it's not in this one as much, but we sell our culture a lot because it's just a great place to work. People enjoy working here. They don't dread coming to work in the morning. And sometimes we'll even put phrases like that in, um, that you're really trying to sell the library as a place that is, again, falling back on what are those advantages. Now go ahead and make sure you're selling those advantages in your job postings, especially if what you're finding is you're not getting enough or a high enough quality of person who's applying for the job. I always like to think about what my ideal candidate looks like. Um, if you're hiring part-time, which I think most of us are hiring part-time, what is it about the ideal candidate's life that allows them or has them looking for a part-time job? Is it because that's all they can do because maybe they're a stay-at-home parent and they can only work when their other parent is home, or what? Or is it somebody who's retired but doesn't want full-time work? I think knowing what your ideal candidate looks like, but you also need to be very careful when you're doing that you don't hurt your own diversity, and that you're not kind of writing it for a particular person. I think it's a real reality that I think all of us would agree is true, that um, stay-at-home moms and people who have additional someone else in the household who earns money, and is perhaps the primary breadwinner, is what libraries have been built on over the years. It's the reason that so many of our libraries don't offer benefits, is because they've just been built on the idea that, oh, well, we'll hire people who has a spouse who gets their benefits through there. And as we can afford to do so, it's good to try to get out of that thing, but it is a reality of that. At the same time, we need to be careful that, when we're hiring, that we are not excluding anyone based on any of the many illegal reasons why we might exclude someone. And finally, I think it's about painting a picture. What is working at this library really going to feel like? Or what is it? Paint that picture of why this is going to be a positive experience for them in your job posting. And I think, that's really where you're selling the library. All right. Anything about job descriptions or postings that somebody wants to add on? Anything anybody would like to come on mic to talk about, ask question, or things that you think are key in this area? All right. I'm not seeing anything here. Okay, so next question. Where are you guys posting the jobs? Are you having trouble finding good staff? Where are you posting the jobs? Kristen, this is the third survey. Um, so if you could pull up the third survey for us. And hopefully you can mark as many different things as you want.
Sorry, John, I'm running into a little bit of technical difficulties. Just one second.
Okay.
Go ahead and keep talking and I'll get this up when I can.
All right, I'm going to skip over where we're posting it and just ask this question. How hard do you make it to apply? Do people have to fill out a physical application, and do they have to bring that physical application into the library and hand it to you? Is there a way they can do it entirely online? Do you require them to fill out the application form, or especially for jobs that may have a little bit of a more professional bent, will a cover letter and resume be sufficient? Are you making it too hard to apply? Because the reality is, people who are out there looking for jobs will often not pursue a job if it's just going to be too much trouble to apply. So it looks like our poll is now up. And if you would go ahead and answer again, Kristen, do we know if this is you can answer as many as you want kind of poll?
It is a multiple choice, yes.
Okay, but can they choose more than one?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. And if you are answering other, or there's something that you use that you don't see here, if you would please put that in the comments, or in the chat, I mean, that would be great. Okay. So far, 12 have participated.
And I have to do a quick little plug. Did everybody know that ILA also has a job line?
I actually looked at some jobs on there the other day, not because I'm looking for jobs, because I'm always curious. Is that free for ILA members?
It is, I think you get one complimentary job posting per calendar year.
Okay. Okay, so I want to respond. Amy asked the questions, if they won't put forth a little effort to apply, will they put forth effort on the job? Um, I think that I would not make the assumption that those two things necessarily go there if I'm making it difficult for them to apply. I'd like to always make sure that it's something that they can do from home. Good people aren't going to waste time. You know what I mean? If they feel like they're, a good quality person, they're not going to waste a lot of time, especially if they view it as not a high possibility that they're going to do that. So I don't think I would make that assumption that if that they're being turned off by an overly difficult process. I'm just going to say, based on that, look at your process and ask yourself, is there a way we can make this easier? Even if it's a fill in the blank PDF instead of a you must fill it out and scan it and email it or drive it into the library. Um, anything we do that limits the pool of people that are applying is not going to be good for our choices. Looking at where we post jobs, it looks like in the library, on the library website, and on social media, as I kind of expected, are all very high. Local newspapers, it's interesting to me that that's being used by as many people as it is, just because partly we don't really have very many around here anymore. A lot of places don't have them. IHLS and Rails job boards, especially for more professional jobs or jobs that somebody might travel for. I do use Indeed. It depends on the job sometimes, but it looks like just one other person uses that. All right, gonna end the poll and share the results. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you guys necessarily couldn't see those. Are you seeing the results as people are putting them in real time, or is it just Christian and I that see that? Okay. Okay, yeah. So until we hit, okay, I didn't do that. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to look at that. Um, I will say one of the things that I would recommend is for a lot of jobs, if somebody already has a resume and a cover letter put together, or a resume, I usually look for a cover letter that's at least a little bit customized. I'm happy to let them to look at their resume, and if they're a good quality candidate, I will offer them an interview if that's going to be the case. And if our policy is we like to have that application in the folder, which is a good idea and which is true here, then they can always fill out the application later. But if the information I need is on the resume, I'm not going to not consider them because they sent me a resume that they already had prepared. What do you guys think is the biggest challenge in terms of getting the word out that you are hiring? What's the hardest part of this? Is it the fact that you maybe don't have a local newspaper anymore? Is it the splintering of the thing, or is it you need to be not just on, if you're only on Facebook these days, you're probably only getting people 40 and older, unless they're telling their kids. If you also can be on Instagram, that helps. Jessica, can I ask what your Jessica Rodriguez, what your starting salary would be for an entry level person? Just curious. I mean, not a ton of money is sometimes a euphemism for very little money. Yeah, it's interesting. I should have put Facebook up there, Noreen. We've used Facebook to point people to our website for it. I haven't actually posted the jobs on Facebook. I think with both Facebook and Indeed, you can get people who are kind of looky-loos but aren't real serious. Okay, well, 14 is not terrible to start. I guess that's minimum wage right now, so I guess that would be where you would start. Um, Hmm. Robert, what community are you located in? If anyone would like to jump on the microphone too, remember that's always an option for us here. All right. Okay. Do you have a situation where you need to put your things out in different languages, for instance, Robert? Or all right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to, I think my next slide is some things that I have learned that have worked for me and the libraries I've been in. And these are not things, most of them, that you can do immediately when you are in need right now. Yeah. And first thing is keep your antenna up. When I'm out in my community, when I am out in my library, I am always thinking about, would this person be a good employee for me in the future? I say that to people a lot. Would you ever consider working at the library in the future? Or if someone says to me, I'm getting ready to retire, I think, oh, you're looking for anything part-time? I think always be selling, especially if you struggle to get people, always be selling your library and always be keeping your antenna out for new people. Remember, you can hire somebody who has not actually applied. I think sometimes we think if we put the job out there and two people apply and neither one of them is very good, but we have somebody out there that we think would be good, go call the person up and say, hey, Bob, I know you're a huge reader. I know you're retired recently. Would you be interested at all in working 10 hours a week here at the library? It's a great job. Um, don't be afraid of doing that. There's nothing wrong with you doing that. And in fact, it's something that I've done, I would say, multiple times. I had somebody I talked to 5 years ago about saying I'd like her to work at my library someday. She finally just qualified this spring and is now one of my newest clerks. So, really always be willing to recruit, keep that person, and don't be hesitant to ask somebody. You never know who might consider doing it. Um, yeah, looking at your volunteers, Jackie, that's such a great point. So many volunteers at the library, and having volunteer opportunities at the library gets people in who might not be ready for or looking for a job right now. And um, get you the opportunity to see how they work and do some things. I guess the most thing is just really don't hesitate to go out and find the person if you need to, especially if the people you're who are getting applied just aren't going to really work. I know this is easy to say, it's hard to do because you have to be the one who's probably doing the work in the meantime. But if nobody that you are feeling kind of positive about applies, don't hire. The one person that you'll have no trouble retaining is the person that you wished you hadn't hired in the first place. Um, when I was in Farmington, we used to have people just walk in off the street and say, "Can I get a job application?" Or, "Are you hiring?" And I always told my staff they knew if I was in the building when somebody walked in to come get me out of my office, and I would go and do just a 1 or 2 minute. Tell me about why you're interested in working in the library visit. It's not an interview. I always reassured them, look, I know you're not dressed for an interview, so don't worry, I'm not paying any attention to that, but I saw you were interested, you were asking about applying, and I'd be curious what your interest is, and tell me your story. And very often I would note them down. I could very quickly, a lot of times, note them down as somebody that um, I definitely wanted to call in the future, or maybe somebody who probably wasn't going to get called in the future. Um, I think sometimes we look for experience. Experience is great, but if the person has the right attitude, has the right skills, and the right potential, we can train them. The job is not that hard. And a really key thing, and I think this goes more to retention than it does to hiring in the first place, make sure the job makes sense for the applicant. Now, this is on the assumption that you have several applicants available, but I'm always trying to suss out, how does this job work in your life right now? Why does this job make sense for you? And that's a specific question we have on our job interview. Because if somebody hires and says, well, I'm really looking for full-time, but this is all I can get right now, you're not going to have them for very long. And you're not going to be able to retain them if what they really need is full-time. I try really hard not to hire people for whom where they can't make a case that the job makes sense in their life. And I think that's part of the reason why our people are able to stay a little bit longer. Um, Sometimes it's true, you may only have one good candidate, and that's what you have to go through. But what else? What has worked for you guys out there? What else um, other than what I just talked about actually has helped? Does anyone have any suggestions? And again, we can get you on the mic, or we can just put it in the chat. Mm. And if you're not talking to your staff and saying, does anybody know somebody who would be great? Uh, I'm just, you can't be shy. To get good people, you need good people to get, find out, get references from anybody, get referrals from anybody, and just talk to people, give them a call, and say, hey, um, Martha works at my library. She says she knows you from church and thinks you'd be great here. Have you ever considered working at the library? I've got a job right now. I'm looking. How many of you hire high school kids? Do most of you hire high school kids? We don't right now because I get so many applicants that um, are not high school kids. Okay. We did in Farmington, and we had a great high school kid who ended up being a great college student worker for us. If your policy is they need to be 18, Lynn, I'm curious, why do they need to be 18? Feel free, we still got you allowed. Is there a particular reason for that?
It's a very good question, and I think it's something that we need to review because some seniors are not 18.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, especially if you're struggling to find good people? I mean, there's going to be some amazing high school students. They are the most amazing ones are going to be rentals. uh, you know, but if you're struggling to find good people, they're going to be some good high school students. And again, the money is going to make more sense for them, and they're not going to be looking for benefits. Yeah, Jessica, that's a good point about teenagers understanding the importance of privacy and confidentiality. I think it's a training issue, though, and I think you certainly are looking for mature teenagers if you're going to hire them. Cindy makes a good point. We have one high school worker at a time due to scheduling issues. They can be less flexible. They're usually less flexible. Um, I think if you've got a policy against it and you're struggling to find good people, maybe it's something you need to look at whether policy is working for you or whether that would open up a new category of potential workers for you. We try to always have, we're right here by Champaign, so we try to have one master's degree student on the staff at all times. I have two right now, actually. But again, you always hire them knowing that you're only going to have them for a particular part of time. Ah, you're not wrong, Jackie, that a lot of the good ones are in clubs and so forth, but I've also had, in Farmington, we had a couple that were not particularly active outside in extracurriculars and were very good workers. Robert, you say interesting things, working with union and non-work. Okay. Anything else that people have found? So I think, we've talked about some of the things about really just being willing to go out and recruit. Um, and talking about opening it to high school kids if you're struggling getting adults that are going to be able to do a good job. And yeah. All right, I'm going to move on because I know half of you needed help on trustees, so let's talk about that. How about retaining employees? Okay, so why do they leave? I guess my question is, why do they leave? Do you do an exit interview? Do you usually know? I mean, we're small libraries. We usually understand enough about people's lives that we have a good sense. For those of you who really have struggled with retention, is it about pay? Is it that they can get better pay somewhere else? What would you say is the primary reasons that you do lose the people you lose? That's a big one, City, the need for benefits. Yeah. Again, it's kind of why I'm, okay. Retirement's a good reason to lose somebody. Mhm. Exit interviews. I'm glad to hear that somebody's doing exit interviews. Wow, there's a lot coming up here. Some more hours, better pay, lost retirement, on another job closer to home. Couldn't get all the days off they wanted. That's probably somebody who might not have been great for you in the first place. Uh, I do informal exit interviews as well. I don't have a formal one. I'd like to get to that at some point. So talking about these, a couple of things about what I'm hearing. There are a lot of people who think that you do get a lot of time to read when you're working at the library, and I think we all know how true that is. When you're first making sure when you hire, if you have options, make sure the person you're hiring, makes sense, or whether they're going to be a rental going in. If you hire a high school student who's a straight A student, they're probably going to go to college. If you hire a master's student like I do, they're going to graduate and want a full-time job. If full-time doesn't work for them or seems unlikely to work for them, it can be a tiebreaker between them and a similarly qualified candidate. Um, so I think sometimes that comes down to trying to figure that out as best you can during the interview process. Um, a lot of what you're saying here, just being realistic about life, is just meaning that, things change. And it doesn't mean you're a bad place to work. It doesn't mean it's not even about pay sometimes. It's really just about life changing. Um, a question I would ask you is do you give your staff opportunities to grow as a staff member? If they come in and they're just, a circulation clerk, they're going to do shelving and do check-in books and handle the circ desk. What else can they do? When I was to keep the job lively and exciting for them. When I was in Farmington, we had 10 staff members, and 6 out of my 10 staff members ran at least one program every year. And I always tried to look at each staff member and say, in addition to the things that I have them here for, is there other things they could do that they might find exciting or motivating or that makes the job more interesting for them? At the same time, in every annual review, I ask the question, how would you like to grow as a librarian, as a staff member in the coming year? Are there things you'd like to do more of that you're not getting the opportunity to? And what are the things that you are doing that you'd like to do less of, understanding that very likely I'm probably not going to be able to change that second thing. And I get amazing information from those two questions in my annual reviews. And I think by really paying attention to the answers to those questions, some of them are just very easy. Nope, I like what I'm doing now. I'm happy. I'll stick with it. Some say, well, I kind of like to be involved with this. If there's any way I can give them a little more responsibility, if they've earned it, and grow them a little bit as a librarian, I feel like it keeps them engaged. Um, Managing staff, I put on here is, what is it we can do as a manager to keep our people longer? And I feel like that's too big of a subject for a 1 hour meetup that's also talking about keeping entertaining trustees. I need to get to rest trustees pretty quickly. Um, I guess I would ask the question, what if you are the problem? Are people leaving because they don't like working for you? And is there any way you would know that? I mean, Robert, about 4 or 5 of you said you do exit interviews. Are you the one doing the interviews? Is there anything in your process that would help you find out if you are the problem? And I say that meaning there might be some specific things you're doing that you could change that would um, help you keep people longer. I think we have to be fair and say we might be the problem. I'm a director who embraces change and is always looking for ways to make the library better. And I've had difficult discussions with some of my staff who are very change averse. And it is hard for them to work for me sometimes because we're always tweaking things. We're always trying things, new things to make things better. And that can be hard. And it's not a problem necessarily. I'm not going to try to be less. I've tried to be a little bit more careful about the changes I make. But in that way, without being a bad director, I can be the problem for somebody who's very change averse. All right, we need to move on to trustees, and feel free to put any other thoughts you have in there. And I think I just wanted to do an in the chat survey. What makes a great trustee? So just 1 or 2 words. What makes a great trustee, guys? What is it you're looking for in a trustee? Rachel, you're not wrong. I'm just worried that that's the first thing that comes to your mind. Uh, Absolutely invested in the library and community. Cindy, there's the perfect kind right there. Attentive but not micromanaging. Willingness to support. Engaged is such a great word. Engaged, Robert, it's such a good word. See, Julie, I agree with you. I only recruit for people who actually use the library. Now, the director in Morton that I used to work for, Janice Sherman, years ago, she had 7 board members and 6 of them never used the library because she thought she wanted to have attorneys and prominent people in the community. And there was value to what she did. I mean, that was a great library. It never made terrible sense to me that only one of our my board members ever showed up in the library outside of board meeting. Um, I don't know if that's strictly necessary, but I think it's always been important to me, and that's where I start a lot of times. I think Noreen, that's great that they have a community interest. Um, Jackie, I want to come back to that comment, just because that word progressive can be used in a lot of different ways. All right, so let's quick switch over to what makes a bad trustee. What is it that we really don't want to see in trustees? I feel like Rachel's going to type, they don't show up for meetings. Okay, we had first 2 comments, so we already have micromanaging twice. Mm-hmm. Mm. I haven't run into that, Cindy, that somebody who has an agenda, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy with their agenda if it is serve the community better and grow our mission. Um, Interesting. Off track. Okay. Yeah. Oh, Julie, you got one of the long talkers, do you? Oh, Laura, that's a tough one. Interest reflecting the interest of the entire community. There's so many people out there these days that don't seem capable of understanding that not everyone sees the world they do. Interesting. I've not run into that, Jessica. I actually have one that I think might kind of fit that category, but he's also very interested in the library. All right. Well, let's move on to finding that great trustee. How do we find that great trustee? Um, I started this time, which I don't usually like to do, but I have had amazing luck with trustees. And it's a lot of the same things that I do with my staff, which is anytime I'm talking to somebody in the community, I'm thinking to myself, would this person be a good library trustee? Um, ooh, Robert, yeah, yeah, we could talk. Honestly, in a meetup, talking about relationships with trustees and working with trustees probably is something that we need to maybe think about because that is really dysfunctional. And I'd be having some real words with my trustee. I've only had that happen once at this particular library. about a trustee who's meeting with staff about library business. Maybe the trustee or the treasurer talks to the accountant. Okay, that's not a problem. But man, you don't want to do that too much. Yeah. That's not good. It's I mean it's part of micromanaging, obviously. I want to show you something that this is thing. I have a file folder. You probably can't read this, but it says Board of Trustees potential nominees. Um, and I flip into this. I have about 5 names right now. Um, And like this one says Lisa, it's got her phone number, it's got her email address. On it, I put potential board. She's an active library user. She's a professor of psychology at the University of Illinois, and she's interested in possibly doing it. So how do I have this potential note with a great potential trustee on it? The reason I have it is because I was out in my library and got into a conversation with somebody, and brought up the subject. Would you seem like you're really interested, you're engaged, you have in I what I look for is people who are asking questions about some of the bigger things going on with the library. They're asking questions about how things work. They're interested in this operation. And I 80% of the time, after that'll happen, I will say to them, would you ever consider serving on the library board? And if they say yes, I stick their name on a note and I put it in this folder. I will tell you, I've gotten 3 or 4 board members out of this. And they've all been excellent board members. Um, Good trustees come from a lot of different places. You know, it's great. I ran into a lady who had small kids who came to the library with her small kids a lot, and I recruited her for the board because all of our board members were old at that time, and I didn't have anybody representing that demographic. Um, I'm going to come back to your comment, Jackie. I think that's worth talking about. I do want to tell you one thing that I've done that has extremely been extremely important here, and it comes down back to something that someone said earlier. If somebody talks to me and they're interested in being a trustee, or if somebody, when we announce that we're looking for trustees, comes in to have a meeting to learn more about it, I always say to them right up front, in our bylaws, um, we we specifically say that this library follows the freedom to read statement by the American Library Association. And I give them a copy of that along with, it goes along with the form for filling out the survey or the, what do you, signatures to run for a board. But I let all of my board members know right up top that if you are not comfortable promoting this, you may be asked to defend this as a member of the board. And this is in our library bylaws. So if you're not comfortable defending that, it may not be a good fit for you. Um, Now, you might say, okay, well, then that means I'm not going to have any conservative board members. No, I actually have a couple of very conservative politically people on my board, but they understood and read and looked ahead of time at that, and they have bought into that element of things. So I strongly recommend that practice. If somebody says I want to run for the board or I'm interested in the board, certainly you start with talking to them why it's good reason and encouraging them, but also make sure that they've had a chance to see that before they run. All right. So what works for me is talk to people all the time, always have your antenna up, ask, you can recruit just like with a good patron, you can go and request. Board members who are leaving are encouraged to give suggestions for replacement. That's a great idea, Amy. It's very good. Um, or even asking, the existing board, if you got a couple months away from the elections and you don't think you have enough nominees to really start asking them to give you names. How many of you actually recruit? Like talk to people and say, hey, I think you'd be a great board member. How many of you have done that? Okay, it looks like most of you. Okay, yeah, awesome. Because I don't think there's anything that works better than that. And we do put out, when we have an upcoming election and we know we have slots that, actually we put it out on our social media and things that board election is upcoming. And if someone's interested in running, they can come and talk to me to learn more about it. And we have found one or two, almost a couple of really amazing trustees have come kind of, they read that and came in and did it. But I would say 80% of the trustees I get is somebody that I've actually recruited. Um, because I work on that all the time. I do it a lot. And I rarely have less than one or two. If you can try to have one positive candidate that you think has a good chance of saying yes, so that if somebody leaves midterm, you have somebody really good you can recommend to appoint, that is a huge help. Um, what else has worked for you guys in finding good trustees? Again, feel free to use the chat or to use voice. I feel like my voice is probably going to be really annoying to all of you by the end of this session. Probably already there.
And John, we are coming up to almost our 3 o'clock time,
Okay.
which you're right. We could have been talking about this for another hour at least.
Yeah, well, and I'm close to the end of the PowerPoint. So
Okay,
we'll
great.
move through here. Please put any good suggestions you have in the chat as we go along, and we're going to kind of power through to the end here. If there's anything I've said that you'd like to talk about more, Muhammad Library is where you can find me. I'm happy to do that. I think, retaining them, it's about being realistic too, about how long you can retain. I thought I took this slide out. So pretend I didn't have a slide that was totally from a. That's a great point. Asking your staff about people ahead of time. I think that's smart. Okay, so I know we went really quickly, guys. I wish we had a little bit more time to do this. It was a big subject, honestly. I would ask, just for everyone's sake, can you list one idea that you got today that you feel like you can use? If you put that in the chat for us, one idea that you got today that you feel like you can use. I'm getting goosebumps from all the good ideas that you guys have gotten. I love this. And if you have more than one, feel free to type more than once. I don't do that enough, Robert, with my staff, is to ask them to suggest people, but honestly, it's a great idea too. People who are at your CERC desk know who the intelligent, engaged people in the community are. If you're not asking them, or especially if you need one on a short notice, do that. All right, so moving to the last thing here, are there any subjects people would like us to do for future meetups? So any topics that's really top of mind for you that this kind of hour-long sharing of ideas would work for? So feel free to put that in the chat. I'm gonna just sell my message that I've done so many times, Kristen. Keep advocating for us small and rural libraries. I don't know how many total libraries there are in the state of Illinois, but I would be willing to guess that 70 to 80% of the actual libraries are small and rural. We're not covering 70, 80% of the people in Illinois, but the actual libraries themselves are small and rural. So, we too often get forgotten. And ILA is for us, ALA is for us. And as I said, I'm really happy. I know that Kristen and the board of ILA has been really working toward being much more aware of and serving the small rural libraries. I think that's something that's we're moving in the right direction.
So I wanted to let everybody know that there is a small and rural library forum meeting next week. I'm going to put the link in the chat. There's a registration link. Everybody is welcome to attend any of the meetings or the events put on by the forum. We are looking for forum board members. So if you're interested, please come to the meeting or reach out to me individually if you have any questions or if you're interested. I'm going to be putting the meeting links in both our Facebook group as well as our Google group. So you'll see that come around again. But I noted the two put down here about staff structures and policies. And I will hope that the forum board would like to continue to do these meetups. And if you would like to continue to see them happen, or if you have ideas, please come to our meetings. We're looking for all sorts of voices. Thank you everybody for attending today. Thank you, John, so much for your time and your wisdom. This has been incredibly insightful, and I'm glad people participated and had really great conversations and ideas. I loved it. Absolutely. Everyone have a great rest of your afternoon, and be well.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. You want to